Dr. Fanike-Kiara Young. Thank you so much for joining the We Rise podcast. Really excited to have you today. Um, you know, and to learn more about your work, we're part of the same business coaching community. I'm always inspired by what you share within that community. So please introduce yourself so folks know who I have the delight of speaking to today, please.
Thank you so much, Christine, for having me. I'm really glad to be here. As you said, my name is Dr. Fanike-Kiara Young. I am the Master Healing Alchemist. I'm a licensed therapist. I am a childhood and financial trauma specialist. I'm a Master Reiki practitioner and a certified clinical hypnotherapist. And I have my doctorate in behavioral health. And so my emphasis when I'm working with my clients is on integrated care and healing holistically. I primarily work with women entrepreneurs that are stuck due to childhood and financial traumas. And I help them to overcome those stuck points, those pain points, the things that they've been told that are limiting for them, those negative thoughts, those negative beliefs about themselves. And I help them to overcome those things using a system that I use myself to overcome my own personal trauma and just get them to a place that they feel like they can really step into their badassness. That's my word. And in their power place so that, they can become the women that they want to become personally and professionally.
I love that. That's beautiful. And that's a lot to hold too. When people are in that place of maybe it's hurt, maybe it's not hurt, maybe it's lingering things. How do folks come to you? How do folks find you? And how do people find a willingness to dive into those places and work through them? And how do you work with folks to move through those places to that sense of badassness, which is such a great word?
So honestly, I would say that the being stuck and the pain cost them way more than doing the work in the end. And so oftentimes I've had people that, they'll contact me and I'm like, hey, let's get going, let's get started. And, they're like, no, I'm not ready. And, those are the same people, they come back to me in 6 months, in a year. And they're like, Dr. Fanike, I've hit rock bottom. And sometimes, unfortunately, it takes some people to get to that place before they say, okay, I'm ready for help. I definitely try to encourage people to manage their mental health and start to really, work on those areas that they feel like that they're not happy with, the things that are not serving them, in that higher place. And before they get to the point of rock bottom, because being at rock bottom it's not a fun place.
It's so hard. Once you're at rock bottom.
It's not a great place to be. Yeah. And that's what I try to, educate people on, is you being stuck, you allowing this thing that really was out of your control, because a lot of, traumas, and I know we'll kind of get into that, but a lot of the traumas that we've endured in our lives were out of our control, especially if they happened in childhood. We were children, so they really had nothing to do with us. We had no control in those situations. But then those things now, as we're adults, are running our lives and keeping us, in these places to where we can't move forward. So I try to educate people on the importance of them putting themselves first and really taking their healing into their own hands, and knowing that they deserve to heal. So a lot of people do not feel worthy of their healing. So, that's a whole nother conversation, but it's that is what leads to a lot of the being stuck, is, do I deserve to work on my healing? I have a family, I have all these other people that I have to take care of. Do I have time to work on myself? And I can't do this right now. And, but that pain, that trauma, is costing them way more than, doing the work in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do folks find that place where they move from realizing that they're stuck or that it's costing them more to being willing to engage in creating something different? Like, do you find any kind of common themes, Dr. Fanike, around what creates that moment or that spark of a willingness to transform? Because it is, as you well know, it's hard work.
Yeah, it is.
Dive into that.
It is. And so one of my criteria for working with the women that I work with is that they have to be ready to do the work. So they have to be ready to embark on this journey. And that is primarily, unfortunately, a component of that is being tired of being tired. And so it's the people that usually come to work with me. And I wish it wasn't like this, but typically this is, that's how it is. They have reached a place of frustration overall with their lives. So there's a component of being unhappy. So no matter what I do, I've tried to work with a business coach. I've tried to, start a relationship. I've tried to, talk to my friends. I've tried to, so I've tried to do all these things. I'm making money, but I can't hold on to the money. My marriage sucks. I'm not, I'm just in a place of just unhappiness across the board. My health and wellness is horrible. I'm not taking care of myself. And so unfortunately, when they reach that place and they realize that I'm not happy and what they are trying is not working, that's typically when they reach out to me. I also get a lot of my referrals from business coaches and financial coaches. And that's because what happens is those same women, they hire, those professionals, but then they can't implement the things that are given to them by them, so they can't implement the strategies. And that's because there is a trauma component that they haven't dealt with. And so if you have, those limiting beliefs, if you don't believe in yourself, if you have low self-worth, if you have, low self-esteem, if you don't feel like you are, worthy of making the money that you're saying, so it comes out of your mouth like, hey, I want to make 6 figures, I want to make seven figures. It's easy to say, but then the execution piece is not there. And it's because they don't really believe what they're saying. And so when they go in to work with these other professionals, the other professionals see, well, I'm giving them the strategies. I'm giving them the tools. I'm telling them what to do to grow their business. I'm giving them everything, but they cannot implement. And so I get a lot of referrals from those professionals, and then they get in with me, and depending on which program they work with me on, by the second or third week they're implementing. They're doing things, and that's because we have begun to really tackle and get to the root of the issue. But you can't be successful, you can't move forward until you get to the issue. And I know this from my own personal experience.
Do you want to say more about that now? About what, or I guess, whatever feels right to you. But what I'm so curious about so often is moving from, I don't necessarily resonate with the language of being stuck in victim. I think they're so complicated. I don't think a word can encompass people's lives and stories in that way. But there is a moment where folks say to themselves, wait a minute, things can be different, things can change. And that spark it's such a curious moment to me. When folks say, I'm going to dig in, and I guess, can you talk a little bit more about your own story, about what's allowed you to embark on this journey? Because it is such a multi-layered process often, and at least that's my experience. Is it's something I learned, and there are new layers of learning that come around with it. What has it looked like in your own life?
So, Christine, I think you described it in a great way. And so it's a spark. And so I will never, ever forget the moment when I realized I am not happy with my life. And it was like, and so I'll never forget it. And in that moment was when I made the decision that I want to be happy. So I have to implement certain things for me to do so. But for myself, my trauma started at a very young age. At 4 years old, that was the first traumatic event that I can recall. And it was me seeing someone get shot and murdered right outside my window. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And back in the 80s, I'm an 80s baby, but back in the 80s, the crack epidemic was really big, especially in New York City, especially in Brooklyn. And so that was the first traumatic event. From there, that was for around 6 years old. That was the first time that I witnessed my dad assault my mom. And my sister and I, we were there. And we wound up, leaving out of the house, and I went and sat on the stairs. And it's so crazy because at 6, I remember certain parts. And my sister and I, we actually had a conversation about this yesterday. And she gave me another piece of information to the story that I couldn't even, recall. But she said that I we both left the apartment at the same time. And I sat on the stairs and she went upstairs because we had an upstairs neighbor. We lived in a brownstone with, it was a 2-story brownstone with 2 apartments in it. So she ran upstairs to the neighbor to try to get help. And I don't remember that part, but I do remember leaving, sitting on the stairs right outside of the apartment, my dad coming out of the apartment and coming over to me and telling me that he was coming back to get me. And when he was leaving, he says to my mom, you know, I'm coming back to get my daughter and I'm going to kill you, bitch. And he leaves. And I remember my mom, you know, getting up and her getting us ready. We go to bed and the next day I go to school as if nothing happened.
Wow.
I don't remember ever having a conversation with her or anything of the sort. And I go to school and then I leave school, come and I go to my grandmother's house because my mom, she worked 12 to 14-hour days. And she was always working late. And so I get to my grandmother's house, but this time she's there. And that's extremely weird because she was never there.
Yeah.
And she calls me in the kitchen. I go in the kitchen and she says 3 words that changed my life forever. Your dad died. And so it was literally that day I saw him, my last time seeing him, he was physically assaulting my mother and he told me that he was coming back to get me and before he left. And then the next day he died. So that triggers abandonment issues because in my mind, you left me, not, you know, as a child, it's not you died, it's you left me. So it triggered, you know, abandonment issues. It triggered a lot of resentment and anger. There were times when I wanted my father, but then I felt guilty for wanting my father because I felt like he was abusive towards my mom. There was a level of protection that I had with my family, but especially my mother growing up. And another part to that story is when my sister and we come in the kitchen and he's assaulting my mom, I went to grab a knife. And I'm 6, and my sister, who's about 10 because she's 4 years older, so she had to be about 10 years old at the time, she grabs my hand and takes the knife from me. And I do remember that. And so that's before I leave the apartment. So I took on this role of protecting my mom and always making sure that my mom was okay. My mom has an 8th grade education. I was very advanced in school. And in my reading and math. And so I took on a lot of responsibilities. So when it came time I remember at a young age, my mom would take me with her to vote. And I would be, you know, with her at the ballots, and she would ask me to read the ballots to her. So I was reading things to her. I remember my sister, again, who's 4 years older than me, we had the same textbooks because I took advanced classes. And so we had the same math books, we had the same reading. So I remember, you know, just taking on certain responsibilities that I don't want to say that I shouldn't have taken on, but as a child, just having a very mature upbringing and not necessarily always being able to engage in, you know, certain childhood activities. And so from that, you know, carrying, you know, that rage, that resentment, that because none of that was ever dealt with. So, you know, therapy was not an option. And, you know, unfortunately, there is a continued stigma of, you know, mental health treatment and going to see a therapist in Black and Brown communities. And so that was never an option. You know, what happens at home stays at home. You don't really tell your business outside of the household. And so I carried all of that into adulthood. And I just remember having horrible relationships. I didn't trust anyone. I dated, and, you know, guys would, you know, openly confess their emotions to me. And I just couldn't allow myself to feel the same way or be receptive to it, but then also having difficulty, you know, reciprocating that same affection. And so that carried with me. I self-harmed as a teenager. I had extreme anger issues. And I mean, just, I fought often. I lashed out often. And I kept so much inside because I didn't know who I could tell. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't really know, if I could really, open up those conversations with anyone. I didn't want people judging me. I didn't want people looking at my mom a certain way, so there were so many parts of me that I kind of kept hidden for so long. But
Mm-hmm.
when you keep things hidden, right? Those things, those thoughts, those emotions, they carry an energy. And
Mm-hmm.
if you hold them all inside, right, that's where they stay. And
Especially under
so,
that protective casing, that you're
yes,
holding all in and under.
yes. But are you really holding it in? Because it comes
Yeah.
out in other ways,
Yeah.
and so it's like, that's why, the lashing out, the anger, the self-harming. So it does come out. It just may not
Yeah.
come out to where you are verbalizing it to other people. And
Mm-hmm.
so I remember going to college, and I'm about 21 years old, and I'm taking a psych 101 course in school, and we're talking about trauma, and the instructor is talking about the impact of trauma on the mind and the body and your behaviors and what that looks like. And I it clicked, like,
Mm-hmm.
wow.
Yeah.
So
Right.
everything that I experienced in childhood, this is why I respond and feel and act the way that I do. And so it clicked for me. And it was like, it was an aha moment.
Yeah.
And I remember, starting to do the work. So here and there, still a young adult with, not a lot of guidance. And so, I'm going to therapy, but I'm not really going as consistently as I probably should.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm doing the meditations. I'm studying spiritually. I'm implementing things. I'm journaling, but not as consistent as I should have. And that went on till about the age of 33, 34.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at 34, I went to China to do a presentation to some doctors and nurses, and I'm teaching them about integrated care. And I'm gone for about 3 weeks because at the time, one of my close friends, she moved to China. So I stayed a week to
Mm-hmm.
help her get oriented. And I come back home and I go into my apartment at the time, and no one's there.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me that I wanted someone there when I got back. I wanted companionship. I wanted love. I wanted someone to miss me in that way.
Yeah.
I wanted a relationship. I wanted a bond. I wanted to open myself up to receive that. I wanted to love someone, and I wanted someone to love me. And that was the defining moment for me, that I was traveling, I was working, I had a business, I think I was getting I was getting my doctorate at the time. And so I'm doing all of the things, but there was a component that was missing. And because that component was missing and I hadn't healed that part of myself, and it was all rooted in my father. So I
Mm-hmm.
had daddy issues for, years, and the abandonment and all of that. And I didn't realize until then that I was carrying an anger towards my father that I had never worked through. And I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't allowed myself to even go there. And so at 34, around 34 was when I made that decision that I needed to work through it. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's when I really started doing the work. But that was the defining moment for me, that, okay, I want to be happy. I have to change this. I can't continue to go, carry on this way. And I find that a lot of the women that reach out to me, they bury themselves in their work. They're excelling in like so many different ways. They have all of the things, they are rocking it, they have the jobs, they're making the money, but then there's a component that they really, really desire, but there's a fear, and the fear usually is rooted in the trauma, and they haven't tapped into that thing, or they've settled for a life that they're not really happy in, but they've settled in because it's comfortable, or they were told that that's what they were supposed to do. And so
Mm-hmm.
when they come to me, it's an element of unhappiness. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times that's what a lot of the women that come to work with me, that's what they have in common. I'm doing all these things, but
Yeah.
I am unhappy at the root.
Right. Totally. What a story. Thank you for sharing that story. When you talked about, doing the healing and doing the work, and I know that looks different for everybody, do you find that there's a moment? at which, I mean, so there's the wounds, the triggers, things can set things off, but, have you found a point where people can heal that initial traumatic event or events or series of events, and then they're able to unlock the thing that was holding them back or to face that fear? What does that look like a little bit more in terms of, I mean, is it possible to heal, or is it a continual lifelong process of healing and healing again and healing again and different elements of it?
So it's both.
Yeah, sure.
So it's
Yeah.
both. So typically what happens is, I know for myself, I set out to heal something, so I was like, okay, I have to work on this anger towards my dad. I have to forgive my father. I have to release it. I have to let it go. I had to rewrite the narrative around him passing away. But it was multi-layered, because I wasn't just angry at him for passing away. I was also angry at him for the abuse that he inflicted upon my mom, but I was also angry because he did it in front of my sister and I. And so it was multi-layered. And so I had to work on forgiving him for all of those things. And I say it's both, because once I worked on the forgiveness piece and the rewriting the narrative, right, another layer was exposed. And so it's usually a continuous thing, because as you work on one thing and you set out to work on, one area. And what I do typically is on my birthday, which starts my new year for me, right? On my birthday, I usually pick a thing that I'm going to focus on for that year. And so it can be anger. It can be my response to others. It can be, forgiveness. It can be, it ranges. And so I'll pick one thing that I work on each year. But I had worked on that part. And then when I worked on that part, another layer was exposed. Right. And so then it was, my mom's messaging about not trusting men. And, you can't trust men, all they want is to have sex with you. They don't, they're not going to treat you well. And that's literally her trauma that she passed on to my sister and I. And so then that's where you have the generational trauma piece that comes into play. And so then when I worked on that part with my dad, then I had to work on that part, because then that's something else that came up. So I think healing in general, period. So when you're talking about physical health healing, when you talk about mental health healing, when you're talking about spiritual health healing, when you talk about energetic health healing, right? It's a continuous process. It's not a one, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, type of heal.
I'm healed. Right.
Right. All right. I did the work.
Right.
I'm done.
Right.
Totally.
Totally.
You have to keep going. I still find myself, my husband and I will be married on February 24th of this year for 4 years. And so what I find is that even though we've been together for 4 years, he's been excellent. He's never done anything to, ever give me pause to trust him, or, think that, he is just the best husband ever, which he is. But I still have moments, I still have moments where a negative thought will run through my head. Well, what if he's, doing this, or, what if he doesn't love me as much as I love him? Or, I still have moments, and I have to catch myself, and I have to do the work, so then it comes to me, having to face that question, or face, whatever with that belief. And then what I do is I counteract it by saying, okay, but is that true? Has he shown you anything to make you believe that, or to look at him that way? Or, what evidence do you have to believe that? And so those are conversations that I'll have with myself in the moment. And it's nothing that he, that I ever tell him, but, but I do have to, right.
Again. Yeah.
So it's so, the thing about it is, and I always consider this, a lot of my trauma happened in childhood. I didn't start working on it till, I lost my dad at 6. I started really, really working on it around 34. So that's almost 30 years later. So within that 30-year time span, it's done some damage, And so I can't expect to heal something that I've been holding on to literally for about 30 years of my life, right? Overnight. So, 5 years later, I'm still working on those things, but it's not as bad as it was when I first started, but I still have moments. So I still have to do, my affirmations. I still have to do my meditations. I still have to, have those conversations with myself. I still have to, and the thing is that I want people to understand, it's when you think about, your physical health, right? And let's say you work out or you exercise, right? And let's say you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to keep it off, right? You can't just work out and take the weight off. You can't work out for 6 months and lose the 10 pounds or whatever. And then say, all right, I'm done. I'm never going to work out again. Right? So you have to like keep working out. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? To keep it off, right?
For sure.
Right. So it's the same thing. And we for some reason, we don't view mental health in the same capacity. Like you have to keep going. Like I have people that will, come to me for therapy and they do like one session with me because my sessions are extremely like they're so packed with goodies, and they'll do one session with me and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this was the best session that I've ever had. And then I'm like, okay, make sure you schedule your next appointment,
right.
And then some of them will not. And then, months later, then they're reaching back out and they're like, oh, it was the best session I had, but I feel like I need more. Yes, you do, because it's not I am a tool on your journey of healing. I am not the person that heals you. You are the person that heals you, but you need a coach. You need a coach. You need someone to help you through it. Again, it's like going to the gym and I get trainers, and I'll get a trainer because it's not like I don't know how to use the equipment in the gym, but what I need is for someone to keep me on track and to keep me consistent. Exactly. Totally. And so it's the same thing.
I put my hands up for folks who can't see, which is like the container, the boundary, the guardrails, the support, all the things that offers. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So beautiful. So it sounds like really high levels of self-awareness when you notice something is being triggered for you, being able to have conversations with different parts of yourself and parts that are carrying this, your story with you. Meditations, affirmations. It sounds like you have a whole host of tools that you're working with yourself to keep the work active. I want to dive in a little bit to how you're working with folks, your clients and others in a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more, Dr. Fanike, about you talked about fear a little bit and how people move with fear. And I think sometimes, in my experience at least, there's this relationship with fear. It can't just be like there's fear. There's some kind of dynamic experience. And for me personally, there's something about control. I'll keep everything safe and controlled, and then nothing will ever be wrong, and vulnerability. And I don't know I would love to hear what your perspective is on those things, control and fear and vulnerability. I remember many years ago, probably 25 years ago, a good friend said to me, I'm always, everyone always says, I don't know how you do all the things you do, and you're always working so hard and all, keeping everything really tight and controlled and safe. And a friend said, do you know how to let yourself be vulnerable? And I was like, piss off, I hate vulnerability. I don't want to be vulnerability. And over the years and over doing a lot of deep work, I'm like slowly allowing that vulnerable, soft underbelly side be exposed. And it does have to do with those layers of fear sometimes that emerge. And a lot of the same things that you talked about, I have to keep really active, talking with different parts of myself that come up, and that awareness, and gotta sit every morning or there's no hope for anything, Exactly. So I would love to hear a little bit about how you see those different components of fear and control and vulnerability play out, either in your own life or in the folks that you work with.
So this is the thing. I had to learn that vulnerability, there's so much strength in it. And the thing about it is, and I believe Brene Brown said this, you can't just numb the negative emotions. So when you numb emotions, right, you numb all of them. And so if you numb all of your emotions, right, then you're just in a place of, you're not connecting with others. You're not connecting with yourself. There's no connection happening. And the thing is, as humans, we strive on connecting. Connection is huge for us, right? So the thing is with vulnerability, when you say, well, I'm scared, or I have a fear to be vulnerable, and usually that comes from, you don't want to be hurt, or you feel like you're going to be exposed and judged, or you feel like, someone's going to critique you and you don't want to be critiqued, right? So it's like, let me just hide. And because I don't want to be rejected. I don't want, I don't want to be hurt. So let me just not open myself up for it. But the problem is, if you never allow yourself to be seen, right, or exposed by others, how then do you live the life that you are wanting to live, right? Mm-hmm. So if you say, for example, even with your podcast, if there's no level of you saying, Dr. Fanike, I get what you're saying. I've experienced that. Even in my own life, there are so many parts and so many layers to this, right? If you're not able to connect a part of yourself, right, and open with it, and let other people know how you're feeling, right? And I see this in my work all the time. How can I heal you if I am scared for you to see who I am and what I've been through? How? But then a part of your healing has to be me saying to you, trust me and be vulnerable with me, right? But I'm not going to be vulnerable with you. But I need you to be vulnerable with me so that I can heal you, or I can show you how to heal, right? So that doesn't really line up. And I found that in writing my book that just came out, I had to make the decision to be vulnerable. And so I literally had to expose so much and so many parts of myself, right? But the goal, and it wasn't easy. So it took me years to write this book. And it took me years because I would start and then I would say, I can't share that with people. Or I would just cry so much while I was writing certain parts. And I was like, I can't, people are going to judge me. And I wasn't ready, right? And then I was finally ready. And I was like, okay, I'm ready now. And so I put it all on paper. But the thing is that with vulnerability comes you opening yourself up, and it comes with you opening yourself up and showing people and exposing who you are, right? But it also invites others to do the same. Yeah. So it opens you up also to receive that from others and receive that same energy, right? And so the thing is with control, because I used to try to control my environment at all times, right? Because I didn't want, again, other people to see me. It was that fear, right? That fear of exposure. So I had to control what they saw, what was the narrative, what I put out there, and I shared some of that earlier. And it was very exhausting because I could never just be myself because I was so worried about, you have to act this way, or don't say this, or, don't talk about this, or don't share this about yourself. And, don't let people see that you're not perfect. That was the thing, right? You have to appear perfect at all times, because if you don't, right, it exposes you and it opens you up, and it's a vulnerability, right, that then occurs. So I would make a huge effort to try to be in control at all times. The problem was with being in control, nothing was growing. Nothing was growing. And what I mean by that is my business wasn't growing. I wasn't growing personally, right? My friendships weren't growing, right? And I found myself just in the same place, right? So it was like a hamster on that wheel, just in the same place. No matter how much I ran, no matter how much work I did, I was just going in circles. And it's because my control wouldn't allow me to move. So nothing was growing. There was no movement. I was stagnant. So when I allowed myself to open up, right, and be vulnerable, what I did was I unlocked the floodgates. Yeah. And by opening up, I allowed other things to come in. So it was new people coming in, right? It was new opportunities coming in, and I was opening myself up to receive. Because the other thing that I realized is that in attracting, the relationship that I wanted, or, positioning myself for that, right? Or positioning myself for success, or positioning myself for my business to grow, right? it required me to be open to receive those things.
Yeah.
The control stopped that. So the thing is that fear can do two things. Fear can either keep you in place and stop you from becoming who it is that you are meant to be, or fear can propel you forward and say, okay, we're either going to do this or we're not. And no matter what happens in the end, I will be okay with it. And so you have to make a decision, and you cannot do both.
Yeah.
You can't have both. So you have to decide, is the fear going to stop you where you are? Are you comfortable with just being stagnant and being in the same place, right? When you look forward to next year, January 2023, are you going to be okay with still being in this same place, making the same amount of money, right? Not having that great relationship, not being able to do the things that you want to do, not living life on your own terms? Are you going to be okay with that? Are you okay with still having those friends that, you know, are talking about things that are of no interest to you? They're not helping you grow. You're the smartest person in the room, right? Are you okay with that? Because if you are, then hold on to the fear, right? But if you're not, then you have to release it so that you can move and grow.
For sure. Yeah. So well said. So well said. In my own journey, I would say, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago when I started this growth journey, you know, it's the floodgates is such a great analogy for it. You know, it's like growth begets growth. And of course I can't control what the outcome is going to be, but it's so much greater than what I could expect at the same time, you know, and going to those places of vulnerability or of fear or of excitement, it's hard and challenging, but it's also, and it's messy as hell because I can't control any of it, you know. And new layers come up all the time, but it is it's so much, I feel so much more alive through the process of it. And absolutely what you said, you know, I love Brené's quote about when you numb the dark, you numb the light. You know, it's that continuum. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I would love to hear more just for your own life now, you know, in the work that you've done. You've been married for almost 4 years and another just, you know, 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
What are the things that bring you joy, Dr. Fanike, in your life? What creates a sense of joy?
Joy. I would say so. Being with my family, it's the small things that I'm probably gonna get. I feel like I'm getting emotional right now. So it's the small things that I never had the chance, I think, to see my mom experience when I was growing up. So, so it's the my husband and I, we laugh a lot, and we that's like literally my best friend. So, you know, usually at night, like when we first get into bed, a lot of times, like we'll like just crack jokes with each other, and we're like laughing, and you know, we really need to be sleeping. And you know, sometimes it's like 12, 1 a.m. in the morning, like it's really crazy, it's ridiculous. But but we can't go to sleep. And so like we're like laughing, we're cracking jokes on each other, you know, like, and it's just so much fun. So that brings me joy. I have a toddler, and I have a lot of birth trauma. And so we have been pregnant 5 times, and we have 1 child out of the 5. So seeing his little face, although, you know, he's 2, so he's like, no, like everything is no, and everything is like, it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So it's like I just, it's like debating with a small me. And so it's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, you know, like it makes your head explode, literally. Like imagine debating with like a small version of you, you know? And so that's how I constantly feel.
It's like my kids. Yes, I totally know what you mean. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yes,
Can we just do the thing?
Yes. Please just do it. Can you just, you know, and it's like no for the sake of just no. Like you don't even have a reason for saying no. Like you're just saying no to me just because. Right, exactly. So, but he just, his spirit, his energy, how smart he is, just, you know, watching him, the interaction, like he'll just walk up to me and kiss me, or, lay on me, or, it's just like those things. And I get to experience that. And I feel like, my mom, because I remember from me being, I think I was like maybe a week old, and I started going to a babysitter who turned out to be like a grandmother to my sister and I growing up. But my mom, she had to go back to work.
Yeah.
And so I have the luxury, and I'll say that I have the luxury of being able to work from home. And I have the luxury of being able to, do all the things, give them a bath myself, and, just spend time with them, and, pick them up from school when my husband isn't. But I have that, space. Hey, let's go get ice cream, or, let's, laying in bed with him and talking to him, so it's a joy that I don't know if my mom ever really was able to experience. And so, even like I said, the relationship with my husband, because, my dad passed away, and then their relationship was, tumultuous. So it wasn't where my relationship is with my husband. So I don't know if she's ever had the chance to really experience that. So I think those are the things that really touch my heart and make me happy, being able to, stay home and hang out with my family. And we went to the movies. I have 2 bonus children from my husband, and we went to the drive-in in our pajamas, and it's just it's just, and then it started raining at the, like those little moments, it's like, wow, I don't know if she ever had the chance to experience those things. So when I talk about, breaking, generational curses, those are the things that matter. We travel as a family. We go to different places, and the kids enjoy it. And we talk about, where do they want to go, and what do they want to do in life? And even being able to, put them in certain activities and go to the activities. I remember both my sister and I were in extracurriculars, and my mom couldn't really come, like she didn't have the opportunity to experience us, me running track, or, my sister playing the flute. And it just, we had to do a lot of stuff on our own without the support of a parent. And so just, I think being able to be present and be here, is what brings me joy, and really, makes that difference.
I love that. Just that, yeah, and truly the cliche, but it's such a beautiful one about your presence, the present being a gift, and being able to know what that really means, and what the gift you're giving your kiddos.
And they grow so fast, like I feel like he was like just born, and he's going to be 3 next month. So our anniversary is the 24th, and his birthday is the 27th. And so like he's going to be 3, and it's like, wow, already, So I think it's just being able to appreciate, the time that you have. And I know people say that, but I didn't really get it until I had him. And now I do, because I'm literally seeing, my baby who, I was holding and breastfeeding, and, was just, carrying. And now he's almost 4 feet tall, and he's almost 3. Yeah, he's like big as I don't know what. But anyway, seeing him grow, and,
totally.
it's amazing to see what they pick up from you, and their behaviors, and what that looks like, and what they mimic, and the lessons that, you're teaching them. So you get to see yourself in a reflection, and that's a gift.
It is a gift, yeah. And it's a wild one. Our oldest is 14, and he's now taller than me. And it's a wild thing to like physically look up to my child who, nurturing and caring, and he is who he is. And our 11-year-old, daughter is like, she's so fully who she is, and to hold them in their own space. It is a gift.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear more about your book, and to hear also about what key lessons learned you'd love to share with others. So first, tell us about your book. So exciting. You have a new release coming out soon. So tell us about that and how folks can find that.
So the book actually was released as an ebook first on Amazon in December. And by the time this podcast, airs, The book will actually be out paperback. It's available via Amazon. It will be available on my site, drfanike.com. The title of the book is What the Fuck is Your Problem? Becoming an Active Worker and Healing Your Trauma. And the title is, it actually came from my husband and I. We like went somewhere, I don't remember, and we are sitting in the car. I think we were like in a parking lot. And we're sitting there and, you know, we're talking and we're watching. I live in Atlanta, so it's a lot of Black and brown people. And so we're sitting in the parking lot and we're watching these women walk by, and most of them were Black women. And they're walking by and their face, like they just looked so sad and angry, right? And so at first, you know, my husband's like, Dad, like, what the fuck is her problem? You know, and so like we're like laughing, and then we're trying to figure out like what's her problem really. Like that's the kind of conversations that we have. So but then it turns into like a serious conversation, and the conversation turns to, you know, the fact that there's a lot of trauma and there's a lot of, you know, just things that happen. You know, you have cultural traumas, you have, you know, childhood traumas, you have financial traumas, you have, you know, birth traumas. There's so many type of, you know, there's so many things, so many experiences that impact the way that, you know, we look, our facial expressions, our, you know, our anger, the way that we try to, you know, turn ourselves into, you know, turn on this protective shell. So we harden ourselves and we make ourselves look a certain way, you know, because again, it roots down to that unhappiness. And so that's literally where the book came from. And so instead of, you know, what the fuck is her problem, that's what the title started as. And then I turned it into What the Fuck is Your Problem? And my goal with the book is really to encourage people to take their healing, one, seriously, but two, to understand that, again, a large part of your healing is about you being active in it. You making the decision that you want to heal, you deciding that now is the time, right? And then taking those steps to do it. And so a lot of it comes from my own journey. You know, like I told you, at 21, I was, you know, dipping and dabbing here and there. And I'm like, yeah, let me do some things, but not consistently. And then, you know, at 34, when I had my realization, really stepping into the healing. Like I was doing all the things. Doing all the things.
All the things.
All the things. So I was like doing yoga like 3 times a week. I'm meditating. You know, I'm going to see a biofeedback specialist. I'm doing acupuncture. I was going to a therapist. You know, I like really kicked it up a notch because I was ready to release. And I was like, for me to release all of these layers, I need everyone hands on deck.
You need all the things. All the things together. Yeah.
Everything. But you know what I learned, Christine? I learned that I couldn't heal by just focusing on the mental. I couldn't heal by just focusing on the physical. I couldn't heal by just focusing on the spiritual or the energetic, right? I had to focus on all of the pieces. And so that's why there's such a huge emphasis for me on integrated care and healing holistically, right? And that's why when I work with my clients, we work on all of the areas because I realize for myself, right, especially when it's that deep rooted trauma, again, that has taken hold to so many parts of your life, right? It's showing up in so many different areas. You have to pull out the big guns and you have to be ready. You know, it's like, listen,
no little things. You
cannot do the little, you know, it's time. And so I am a licensed therapist, but I have found that the coaching programs that I put together have been way more effective and way more efficient. And that's because with therapy, you know, they may, like I said, they may schedule a session here and there. They may not be consistent with it. It's the time constraints as well. And so I have found that by doing it this way, by creating the programs that I've created, which are based off of my own, you know, healing experiences and my own healing rituals, it's been way more effective. So the book really, really, you know, I interview multiple women for the book. And in these interviews, they all talk about a different form of trauma that they experienced as women, and then what they did to actively heal that trauma. And so all of them, you know, were active workers. That was very key for me because I wanted everyone that reads the book to leave with solutions, to leave with a direction, to leave with, you know, hey, yes, this happened, right? Yes, you experienced it. Now what? Now,
Yeah.
what are you going to do about it? And you can't just sit in it. So that's what the book focuses on. It is available, like I said, right now on actually all of the major outlets. So Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble. You can find it on my website, drfanike.com. And I also have a journal that goes with it. It's a complimentary journal. And the journal right now is only available on my website at drfanike.com. So, you know, it's a tool. It's there to really help people and push them to really own their healing process and to step into it and to make it happen.
Beautiful. As active workers in their own healing. What a beautiful phrase. So we'll include links to all of that goodness in the show notes and on the website at yeswerise.org. So I know we're getting ready to close up soon. I'm so excited to read your book.
Man.
I can't wait for it. There's so many more things I would love to ask you.
Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
I know. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 after the book comes out. But there's so much. What other thoughts or reflections would you like to share, Dr. Fanike? What else would you like for any other lessons learned you want to share with folks as we get ready to close out today?
The thing that I think I want to share is don't work so hard to avoid your healing. I think we put a lot of energy into avoiding it and not wanting to face it and not wanting to discuss it and not wanting to do the work. And again, that effort a lot of times will cost us way more in the end than if we just did the work and you know and owned it. You know,
the friction.
Yes. It's literally like beating your head up against the wall like, over and over and over again. You know, and I've done it. You know, I've beat my head against the wall a few times, and so I know. You know, I get it. I call myself I'm a hard-headed healer, and I've gotten better. You know, I've gotten better. I've gotten better. But you know, I used to be very hard-headed. Like, nope, I'm not going to do it. Nope, I'm just going to keep repeating this lesson over and over and over again until I was like, okay, I surrender and I will do the work. So, so that's the biggest thing that I would say is just stop fighting so hard to avoid it and step into it, because I promise you, on the other side of doing the work, life is so much better.
Yes, so much better. It's so hard to know when you're on the other side of it, how much better it is on the other side.
Yes. No, the grass really is greener on the other side. Literally, it is. I promise you.
I love that. That's beautiful. I decided in early 2022, a month before COVID hit, to become alcohol free because the numbing the light and the numbing the dark. And had I known how much greener the grass is on the other side, for me, it's almost 2 years, and it's amazing. But it's not until I'm like standing in the green grass, I'm like, oh, that was a lot of friction, unnecessary friction for so long. So, in any case, Dr. Fanike, your just words of wisdom and your stories, just such a beautifully spun golden cloak that you've covered us with. Thank you so much for your time today. I can't wait to share this. And thanks for joining the podcast today.
Thank you. I had so much fun, and let's do part 2.
I'll come back.
I would love that.
That'd be awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining.